Hey everyone. So who made it to see Weird Al last night? So one of the things that I was very impressed by was the scene changes with all of the costumes and everything that they did. And the fact that there was this amazingly nice perceived performance. But didn't work at all. So what we're here to talk about today, Susie and I, is effectively how to actually measure and improve customer experience. We've heard a lot about how you need to take performance data and customer experience and business metrics and align those things. And we're going to try and actually tell you how New Relic has managed to do that, as opposed to just saying, hey, this is a great idea. With that in mind, and before I begin, I wanted to explain some things. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susie Biley. I'm the mobile product manager at New Relic.
And I'm Jonathan Karon, and I'm a mobile engineering manager at New Relic. And yeah. Oh, thank you. No, it's her.
Yeah. So in the interest of making the best use of everybody's time, after lunch, you guys want to get to the good stuff. I'm just going to jump right on in. If you have questions, we'll have time later at the mobile booth. You can come up to us and ask us questions. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to start by talking about the latest in user expectations for client-side performance. So in this case, browser page load times. Start with that. And then I'm going to shift over and talk about the role of mobile in the overall digital world. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the related investment with user expectations, making better mobile experiences. What are we spending to make mobile experiences better? So I'm going to start us off by saying something that hopefully a lot of us here understand. We'll see. Application performance, great user experiences. All right, these are very, very related, and I think that pretty much everyone who is here at this conference has some understanding of that. We all want our users to have a great experience with our applications. And even though we already know this and we know performance is important, it's kind of hard to do that much about it if we don't know what the numbers are. What are our users' expectations? So first, we'll talk about desktop websites. In the case of desktop websites, 49% of our users actually expect less than a 2-second page load time. 30% expect faster than 1 second. And 18% of our users want it to be instantaneous. OK, now that's the stat. It's true. People really think that magic can happen. Obviously, these are some tough goals for us to meet. It's good to have targets. And Jonathan will end up talking to you a little bit more about better defining those targets and how do we actually get there. I'm going to kind of give you a breakdown of where do we start. So I don't know if you guys recognize the layout of this a little bit. This is actually some numbers that we can get from our own UI. And these are real web applications. So on the left-hand side, we have a bunch of browser-side page load times. So that means that when people are using our web applications, what is the page load time that they see as a user? On the right-hand side, we see the app server portion of those times. So each row here actually represents a web application. These are real web applications. And you'll start to notice something about the numbers on the right. They're all pretty small. They're all less than a second. But what is your user actually experiencing? Your user is actually experiencing the number on the left. So how much of performance is on the back end versus on the client? Well, over 90% of our page load time is actually on the client side. So we have a whole lot of data. 90% is the number. 90% of page load time is on the client side. Now that's a tricky number, because the thing with client-side performance is there are a lot of variables that we don't have control over. Network connection time. We have people who are using their own desktops, their own laptops. We have browsers to take into consideration. We don't have control over all of those. But still, those performance times, they could use some improvement, right? There's a lot we can do to make this better. So that's for desktop websites. That's one part of the story. The other part of the story, literally the other half of the story is mobile. So when I'm talking about mobile now, I'm talking about both mobile apps and mobile websites. So on the left-hand side, you'll see how mobile has grown in terms of overall online traffic, and on the right-hand side, how it's grown in terms of online sales. Mobile is now at 47% of all online traffic, almost half. And it actually crossed the halfway point last holidays, and is expected to cross it again this year. The other great number to note is online sales. So this number kind of surprised me, but in the last 2 years, online sales through mobile devices has doubled to 24% of all online sales, and that number is actually expected to double again in the next 2 years. So everybody knows mobile is big, blah, 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 Ray says, it's big. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about the investment that's going into mobile. So I always hear mobile is a huge part of our strategies. We really have to do a lot of things about it. But what I didn't really know was, where is the money actually going? Well, there's where the money's going. So mobile marketing. This year, they're expecting to spend $30 billion in the United States on mobile marketing. We'll see that 52%, mobile is now 52% of all digital marketing. So it's crossed, it's beat desktop out for marketing dollars. So $30 billion, okay, so big number. And what's the purpose of that? That's to get people to your store. And when I say store now, I mean to your mobile apps and to your mobile websites. That's the money that's being spent. And that's important, because if you don't have users coming to your mobile apps and your mobile websites, without users, you can't have a great user experience. You need the people to come to your store. But then once they get there, if the experience is not great, you kind of lost them. So it's up to us, and I say us, I mean developers, development managers, product managers, to actually give them a great experience so that they stay. And we can hang on to those users that we just spent all that money on. Here's my investment comparison. On the left, you'll see the marketing part. And on the right, you'll see the development investment. OK, so a little bit more about the investment on the mobile development side. Even at online retailers, they only have, on average, 3.1 full-time mobile developers as part of their organizations. 3.1 developers. Now, we all know that lots of people care about mobile. Mobile is part of the strategy. Lots of people are stakeholders for mobile. But in terms of actual developers, 3.1. So that's tough, right? We talked about user expectations. We talked about, instantaneous page load time, guys. We can do it, right? Really high user expectations are out there. Mobile is huge. Mobile is taken over slowly but surely. OK, really fast is taking over. Mobile's big. And the third aspect to this, investment in actually making mobile user experiences is quite small. There are some challenges here, and in my role as a product manager, what I do on a regular basis is I say, hey, here's the challenge, here's the market problem, here are the requirements, and then I just say, hey, Jonathan, good luck, dude. Got it.
Thanks, Susie. Yeah, mobile is a very exciting world, and Susie as my PM makes my life very exciting. I hope you all feel the same way. So yes, 3.1 developers. If you look at the numbers for part-time, which means developers working on more than just mobile web and native, it's something like 7 people per company. And these are big companies, maybe not a Fortune 500, but significant e-commerce retailers who have enough people to count on one hand to deliver customer experience through mobile devices. So yeah, what I'm going to share with you is the best practices we've developed at New Relic, specifically focused on measuring and improving the customer experience we're delivering. Now, some of my examples will be native, specific to our native mobile apps, but the basic principles apply to browser and mobile. So mobile developers face a lot of expectations. New Relic's pretty typical. We have a very small mobile development team compared to our overall size. So with all the stakeholders we have, and you all as customers, here's the process that we've developed to actually focus on and continuously improve the experience that you're getting through our mobile apps. The first thing we have to do is find all of our stakeholders and actually define and prioritize the key interactions with our software that matter to our customers and drive business outcomes. Right? Not everything in the app means the same thing to the business or to our end users. Then we build a culture and a discipline around actually measuring perceived performance of those things, which is not an out-of-the-box metric that you just get. And finally, we agree on prioritization and performance targets for all of those things we're measuring. And then we build things, we ship them, we remeasure, we iterate, et cetera. Continuous customer experience improvement. So the first step is building consensus, right? Which means you get out your big arms and you invite all sorts of people into a room. And part of this is shifting your perspective, if you're a developer, away from the code itself and toward the customer interactions. Right? What is an interaction? An interaction is the scope of software that executes in order to fulfill something that a customer has asked you to do. So logging in, checking out, right, viewing a photo gallery, these are all interactions. I, as a user, pick up my phone, here's a phone, I tap something, I wait for something to happen, done. And because they're performed by software, interactions are susceptible to bugs, performance issues, crashes, all sorts of problems. Now, not all interactions are created equal. All right, and this is where you get everyone together. You get your designers, your marketers, your PM, maybe an executive sponsor if you're really brave. And you all come together and start from why a customer uses your software. What is the core experience that they're going to have with you as a business? Sometimes this can be derived from business outcome metrics. I know one company that just had a big green chart on the wall, and it was dollars per minute. Right? What drives dollars per minute? For others, it'll be different. It might be lead generation. It might be customer acquisition. It might be providing service. So you get everyone in the room who cares about your app. You'll probably find you have more stakeholders than developers. And then you talk this through, and you actually identify, say, the top 5 interactions within your app. And these are the things that everyone eventually, after some hard work, agrees are the most important things for your app to do well. Focus on the outcomes of the customers. Now, once you've got this list and you're going to have to work on prioritizing it, you're going to find that there's no industry standard metric for measuring perceived performance. So what we've done is we've developed this sort of what I think of as a capability to figure out how to measure end user performance. And it's a process. It's not something you just sit down and do one day. But why should you measure these things? Well, measurement is like this magic incantation for data nerds, right? It allows us to do things like A/B testing, ROI analysis, continuous improvement. It's the precondition that allows us to make data-driven decisions. If we don't understand the numbers that we're creating out of our measurements, we can't really drive ourselves to improve the business and the customer's experience, which is great. What should we measure? How do we measure it? As we dove really enthusiastically into this, and we were like, yes, we're going to measure all the interactions all the time, we realized we were going to drown in a sea of data, and that would be useless, right? Because data is not information. If you have too much data, you basically know nothing. So we stepped back and we thought about, like, I think someone called it the minimum viable measurement. And that led to a methodology that we've really based our own internal process on. So consider your front-end software. Right? It's running on a device you don't control outside your data center with a network that is completely different every minute of the day for different users. And what we found is that we needed to start by focusing on measuring the very most basic binary types of things we could measure and quantify what we were kind of calling the really bad problems. Right? And then by doing that, we learned a little bit about how to measure things and how to think about measuring, inferring how something actually works based on data we had. So we created this hierarchy, right? And you're going to want to focus on performance at the top of the pyramid, but to do that, you have to start at the base and focus on availability. Because the first thing you care about is whether anyone can use your software. If no one can log into your website, or if your app is simply not working, then the rest of it really doesn't matter. After that, you care about functional correctness. Do those key interactions work correctly for all of your users? And finally, once you've learned how to measure those sorts of things, then you can look at duration and performance and think about, is this interaction happening fast enough to not be pissing people off? So the top, that top is not like the goal and the pinnacle of success. It's more something that you can't even really do well until you've built up the base. So available, functional, fast, right? In that order, that's how we've approached this discipline of measurement. Because performance should really not be about how fast you throw up an error box. So I'm going to kind of go quickly through this and give you a few examples of what this actually means. Availability is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, right? If you have on-call engineers, availability issues are the things that they're going to get paged on and go and fix anytime. So ways to measure whether you're available. If you have a web server, some of the transactions in that web server deliver page views. Right? That if someone can't get a page loaded, then your site's not there for them and you're not available. In a mobile app, the most typical measurement is crash rate. You might also consider the key things that your app does. Right? In our app, New Relic's app alerts you and it shows you your data. And to show you your data, you have to be able to log in. So if our login service is down and we can't authenticate, then we really can't show you your data and we're not available. So these measurements will tell you if something has gone catastrophically wrong, right? For e-commerce, this is probably, can people buy things? Can they view products? If you're a photo sharing app and you can't actually deliver any media to the device, you have an availability problem. So when we sat down and thought about the user experience in our app, one of the things we identified very quickly was login. Right? As I said, if you can't log in, then you can't get your data. So how do we detect if we have a login availability problem? Well, in our native mobile app, New Relic Mobile generates these metrics for all network activity. And one of the metrics that we zoomed in on was this request health to our login server. And when we measured the data, we said, based on typical usage in the middle of the night when we have the fewest users online, if we don't see any OAuth token refreshes hitting our login service for 3 or more minutes, that's very atypical. We probably have something catastrophically wrong in the system, and we need to fix that. So this is something we actually have set up as a pageable alert, and it'll wake someone up, and they can go investigate if this fails. Great. So let's say you've done all the hard work now, and you actually have a good set of measurements for, is our app up and running? Can anyone use it? Then we move on to functional correctness. And this is really, is the app doing what you intended it to for most of your customers? Those key interactions, are they actually working correctly? Or are people getting a lot of errors? And there's lots of tools for doing this, right? In an app server, you can look at AJAX and media endpoints and see whether you're actually delivering content to people, whether you're processing requests. In browser, we have JavaScript errors now, which will tell you if you just introduced a bug in your front-end code that is making the page stall out for everyone, or for a lot of people, or when someone puts something funny into the input box. Mobile automatically records interactions for each screen in the app that you visit. And so you can kind of get a sense of, are the screens that are critical actually being used, or are they falling into disuse because we messed up something in the funnel to get people there? And then synthetic monitoring is something we've become very, very, very bullish on. We use synthetic monitoring to make sure that our API servers don't break. Because, yeah, no one would ever change an API server without telling the mobile team. Yeah. So we found another metric that we really liked for our login service, going back to that example. If you get rid of 401 errors from a service, like a login service, which basically means someone gave you the wrong password, then other errors coming back from the service mean there's some kind of difference of opinion between the app and the server, or between your front-end JavaScript and the server. So these may not make the app unusable if you're seeing an elevated error rate here, but it's definitely an issue because it means some customers aren't getting their data quickly, or maybe they're being bumped out to the login screen every couple minutes, and that's super frustrating, right? That erodes your trust in the app and in the company and the brand. So I mentioned monitoring your app servers for breaking changes, because apparently that has happened to someone in this room. One of our iOS developers, frustrated by this, found this thing called JSON Schema, which is it's a language for describing the structure and typing of JSON data. And there are all these libraries that you can find that will validate an actual JSON payload against a JSON schema document. And so since our own synthetics product runs in JavaScript, we put the validator into the synthetics script, and every hour we have it hit our staging API servers and validate that every API call that our app depends on returns the expected data. Right? And this means that the app itself isn't getting nulls or malformed data or things it doesn't expect back. And we've actually caught a few teams that have changed an API without telling us and been able to go and talk to them before they rolled something out to production that would have been a significant functional issue for our users. And you can do this with Node or with any other kind of server-side language. It's pretty easy to set up. So availability and functionality are big parts of user experience. If someone can't get into your store because the door's locked or the cash register's broken so they can't buy anything, they're not going to trek back across town again later. And if we're pouring $30 billion a year into making our mobile businesses relevant, then we'd better be there when people show up. And that's what our 3 developers work on all the time. But yeah, right, I mean, this is the elephant and the mouse, right? But if you're available and functional, that's excellent. You're open for business, but people can still be really upset about the long line they have to stand in. And that's where performance comes in, right? And then the question is, how fast is fast enough? Because 3 seconds, right? That's not very long in mobile land. It turns out, actually, there's good news. Instead of 1 second or instantaneous, most people are willing to give you 3 seconds on the mobile web before they say, this is too long, I'm going away. There's actually one study that says 30% of people will give you 6 seconds. This is exciting. They're giving us some slack. So now is the time when you have to get really creative, because not all interactions are created equal, right? If I hit a checkout button and I'm just waiting for payment confirmation, I'll wait 5 or 10 seconds for the little check. Great, we'll send you your product now. But if I'm typing and the screen is lagging and the autocomplete keeps changing, it's really frustrating. So here's a trick we use to look at the distinctions between what an acceptable level of performance is in your mobile app. I call this the iteration loop. And it's essentially, if you think about how a user's interacting with your app, the faster they want to take their next action, the tighter the iteration loop. So as I'm typing, I tap a flat screen, and I want to confirm that I've hit the right button before I move on to tapping the next part of the screen. So that's very tight. If it takes me 3 seconds every time I tap the button, I'm going to be really pissed off at you. So I don't do that. So every interaction is created different. And with that in mind, there's a few tools you can use to measure interactions. In our mobile apps with login, we actually came up with 2 metrics. One was a custom interaction we defined, which measures I tap the button, 2, the app is done. And the other one is measuring the back-end performance of authentication to make sure we're not blocking the screen or blocking the flow of the user for a while. So this is the whole development of how you measure things, right? Now what do you do with that? Well, it's the target, ship, repeat part, right? Get everyone back in the room and look at the real numbers you have and consider, are these numbers good enough for us? And if not, you're going to say, well, OK, we need realistic goals for what we're going to improve. And we created this thing that I call this, like, a customer experience map, right? It tells me, here's some interactions, here's the measurements we have for them. Are we available, functional, and performant for each of these? It's pretty clear from this what we as a team need to focus on next. And I haven't had an executive say, that's stupid. You should make it fast. So that's it. 3 easy, simple steps that just require a lot of politics and some elbow grease. And thank you very much. Susie and I will be around for questions out that way.